Hi there, and welcome to First Draft for the month of March. We are going to be talking about some of the things that we wish we'd known when we first started out writing. So we're going to kind of do this as a little bit of a roundtable. And to start off the roundtable, I'm actually going to have us introduce ourselves. So Alexis, you want to start out?
Hi, I'm Alexis Ann. I write contemporary and erotic romance, and tonight I am drinking non-alcoholic beverage because I am alone parenting tonight, and I think I'm going to take Benadryl because the allergies are really crazy. So I'm drinking Smart seltzer water because electrolytes.
Very nice. Mary Chris, what about you?
I'm Mary Chris Escobar. I write women's fiction. And I am, in honor of St. Patrick's Day, having a Grateful Pale Ale from Star Hill, which is not particularly Irish, but I am having it in my St. Patrick's Day glass from college in 1999. So well loved and well celebrated.
Very impressed you still have that glass.
You know. I also want to go back. It looked like, did you have some kind of pub glass at least for your water?
It is. It's in a Murphy's. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. It's a good way to drink it.
This glass I have, but. No. I am Julia Kelly. I also write as Julia Blake. I'm a historical and contemporary romance author, and I'm also just doing the seltzer water thing today because I have got some revisions in writing that I need to do once we're done with this. So we're going to just jump right into things, and as I mentioned, we're talking about what we wish we had known when we first started out writing. We also kind of open things up to some of our friends and other writers on Twitter and Facebook, so we're going to get kind of a mix of different responses here to give you a bit of an idea of some of the pitfalls and some of also the good things that you kind of wish that you had known. So why don't I start with the way we were going around before. Alexis, what's one of those things that you wish you had known?
Everything. Everyone wants to say that. I actually came up with this great analogy when I was making my notes earlier. And you know me, I love my analogies. And sometimes they go off the rails, but this one's a really good one. So being a brand new author coming into the publishing world is like somebody airdropping you in the middle of the Atlantic. And there's this lovely stream, Gulf Stream or whatever it is. It's not a Gulf Stream because it's not the Gulf. It's the Atlantic. Anyway, there's this lovely stream that carried all those, all the ships across the Atlantic. And some people are going to get dropped in that stream and they're going to whoosh all the way across the Atlantic to the Caribbean and they're going to be living in paradise. And those are the lucky people. Some of us are dropped into the middle of absolutely nowhere with no wind and no sails and no currents, and it's a long, hard journey to land. And everybody gets there at a different pace and with different tools, and you just kind of have to think of the whole thing as this big, long journey and to not compare yourself to others and to not think, hey, this person was successful in their first book and I was successful on my 27th book or whatever. It's a mess and there is no formula and you just got to keep working at it. And I really wish that I had understood fully how completely complicated and crazy this journey was going to be going forward.
How about you, Mary Chris?
I mean, that's a really good one. I should go first. I really should go before the analogy because it's beautiful and I don't know what to say now.
It was more elaborate. I can keep going.
But, I think along those same lines, something early on that I wish I knew is that there's not one right way, and that you can change course and that you can't look to kind of like the vision of like the person who blew across the ocean is in the Caribbean and sitting there, and enjoying everything. You can't assume your journey is going to be like that, and you can't judge your journey if it isn't that. So I think just knowing that it's okay, that there's not a right way to do it, that you may, hear from other people, you have to write the book and get an agent and, that's the only way to go. Or you may hear from a different camp, like you have to self-publish, like you're never going to make money if you don't do it the other way. I feel like there's all these kind of absolutes. And I really wish early on someone had said to me, there's no one right way and you may pick one way and then pick a different way. And a lot of it's going to depend on what's right for you as a person, what's right in your career at that moment. So I think similarly, just you have to kind of find your own way towards it.
Yeah, definitely. That was also not surprisingly something that I was going to make sure to mention. And then also Katie Demback, who is Young Librarian on Twitter, said how long kind of quote unquote getting started could take. I first started writing 20 years ago and stalled out after first getting published 10 years ago. So again, that idea that your path may not be a path that's a straight line. It may be a really squiggly line with a lot of different branches and things like that. I wish that somebody had told me that, and I also wish that somebody had told me, you can keep the faith and you can keep pushing and want to be a writer, but you also need to take care of yourself as a person and make sure that you are doing things like exercising and eating and sleeping and all of those things, because the reality is that this is a long, long path, and it's going to take a lot of dips and valleys, and it's going to take a lot of turns. And ultimately, you need to be as healthy as you can be, and you need to be able to actually, take those opportunities when they come up. And being kind to yourself is the best way to ensure that you do that. It also makes you a much better person to be around, because everybody kind of knows the stereotype of the crazy writer who's just completely consumed in all those things. And it's very true, especially around deadlines. So the less you can be like that during the rest of your life. No, I'm like that too right now. So the less you can be like that during the rest of your life, the better for your relationships with yourself and with everybody else. So.
Yeah, and I think to carry that, back to the metaphor we started with, if you can't make that swim if you're not taking care of yourself. Like if you are not healthy and, just in your best shape, if you're dropped there in the middle of the ocean, you can't do that when you're floundering and you're not in good shape to do that. So to make that journey, you have to take care of yourself, which isn't easy. It's super, super, super easy to say. It's super hard to do.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, this all kind of got kicked off because of some chatter about etiquette. So maybe we should tackle the etiquette in the room.
Sure.
You're on fire with this today.
She's our transitions person right now.
I know, right? So yeah, I think there's this idea that, every now and then something surfaces about writers behaving badly and, in all kinds of different forms. And I feel like a lot of times I look at those and I think, but I feel like they just didn't know. Where's the Emily Post for, is that the right name? Was it Emily?
Yeah.
Did she do that? Where's the Emily Post for authors? Who tells you the right way to ask somebody for a blurb and the wrong way to ask somebody for a blurb and the right way to, ask somebody to promote your book? Or do you even ask that? So yeah, I think that is the etiquette in the room. Who tells you that? It's like going to a fancy dinner and not knowing which fork to eat with. If no one ever taught you that, how do you figure it out?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
we need an Emily Post.
We do. And I think it's a lot of sort of learned behavior at this point. It's I think the most important thing for new authors is to try to find your people and find your tribe. And I think all of us are very big on that because we were able to do that kind of with ourselves and with our writing group. But I think that it's difficult to do that when you're just looking at this sea of authors and you think to yourself, but how am I supposed to actually approach any of them, and how am I supposed to connect with any of them? And once you have some of those connections and you can run some things by other people and say, do you think it would be really weird if I approached this author and said, hey, would you read my book and consider blurbing it? They can guide you a little bit and give you a little bit of a kind of an instinct gut check about what maybe you should be doing or shouldn't be doing. But it is, I will admit, it is very hard when you don't know anybody in the business, and it's very hard when you don't really know what you're doing because you're not even coming from a place where you can draw on those relationships.
Absolutely. I feel like I started off completely alone, whether that was accurate or not. That's at least my perception of that first 6 months to a year of writing was, even after I met you two, it was still, I have to figure this out. How do I get someone to review my book? How do I get it?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's this idea that a lot of times the people that you connect with might be kind of at the same level that you are. So sometimes you're figuring it out together. I mean, you're all sort of wondering, where do we go from here? And it can be helpful to have those people to bounce things off, And And, I think there are some good trainings. Like I'm thinking back to like when I did some of these things for the first time, like what did I do and what did I rely on? And I know the blurb question, which we could probably do a whole podcast and show on blurbs and whether they're worth doing or not. But I actually had taken some training, I think, about, how to reach out, kind of how to cold contact people. And it was more about like how to reach out maybe to a blogger or like a website that you'd like to write for. But there was some great advice there about sort of how to structure your email and how to be super, super businesslike and how to do a tie-in about like, why you were asking this. And for me, I think that was really helpful to be able to translate that idea of a super professional, like how to do a super professional ask in one context, and then to just kind of translate it into the context of asking for a blurb. And I do think some of that isn't even anything you would want to attempt as like a true newbie, because I think you can cold contact people, but ideally you want to at least be able to say, hey, I saw your keynote at this conference, or I think one of mine was like, I sat near you on a plane on the way back from this conference, and like, how are you? Like the person had a sprained ankle. I'm like, how's your ankle? Like, I think you want to like have a little something. So like some of these etiquette things, like I feel like you don't walk up to somebody when you're like a brand new author and have no way to connect and say, hey, blurb my book. I think because you need that, like, I don't know what you call it, like lukewarm introduction. Like it doesn't have to be strong, but I think you want something.
Yeah, and I think that, as a general rule, being polite is probably a good way to go. And, introducing yourself, I don't think there's anything wrong with introducing yourself. Going in strong with an ask, especially if it's an ask that requires an author to leverage their Facebook, their newsletter, their Twitter, anything like that, unsolicited without knowing you, it's probably going to be a no. And you should just know that off the bat. So you're better off, I think, building a network of people by being polite, introducing yourself, kind of doing the things that a lot of people, when they write articles about going to conferences and things like that, they usually talk about, don't be afraid to approach somebody, especially if they're not in a 2 or 3 person conversation, because that may be a business meeting. But go ahead and just introduce yourself, say something about how, you admire their work or whatever it is, and then you can kind of quietly get out of it, and then you can continue to build a relationship, whether it's online or wherever you're doing it. But I do think, and I think every author has gone through this, of getting the cold Facebook message that says, I have a book coming out, please recommend it to your readers. And I don't know who you are, and I don't know what your book is, and it may be the greatest book in the world, but the reality is I'm going to take a step back and say, I can't in good faith recommend something or do something for you if I don't know who you are, because that's my word as an author going out to my readers and the trust and relationship that I've built up with them. So I think that cold ask can be hard if you're going in big.
Exactly, because you're asking a lot. You keep using the big ask because that's what it is. You're asking for their time, for their name, for a lot. And what are you bringing to the relationship? Right. Especially if you're a newbie, you're not bringing anything. You're asking that of the person that you're contacting. And if you have no prior relationship, then what you're doing is really inappropriate because there is no existing relationship there. You need to build a relationship, and it may be slow, and it may even be something that's always kind of a second degree kind of thing, but at least at that point there is a point of contact, there is a relationship, there's, hey, we both know Julia, and I write historical too, and I'm trying to put together, and this is the other thing that was brought up on one of the posts that I was reading through, there's a huge difference between, hey, help me, and hey, I'm doing this thing that I would like you to be part of. And that was one of the recommendations, was instead of asking for other authors to do things for you, it's to put something together yourself, whether it's a giveaway or a gift basket or a Facebook party or whatever. And at that point, the ask is a little bit more, it's easier for the author to either accept or deny, because it's not just, hey, you, I want you to read my book. Hey, you, I want you to review it. It's, hey, I'm doing this thing. Here's the Google form. You can fill it out if you want to donate a book. And you can follow it up. You can develop a relationship from that. It's a much easier entree into working with an author. And I thought that was really interesting. It was a good point.
And I think you'll find that a lot of authors are very generous with their time, especially when they feel like somebody is genuinely coming from a place of just not knowing. And, really having a question about like, oh God, I don't have a newsletter. How do I even start it? I saw your newsletter. I thought it was great. Can you give me any advice? I think that, things like that are, much more, it's much easier to start building those relationships when it's genuinely coming from a place of, I don't know, because all of us at some point have been there. And I think a lot of us remember what that feels like. So it's helpful. And I think a lot of people really are willing to be generous with their advice and their knowledge.
I think definitely. I think you hit a point where you're excited to do that. Like the first time, like I remember when the first time someone asked me a question, it's kind of like that, like about a newsletter or blog. I'm like, oh, you're asking me? Like, because it doesn't seem that far away when I was the person asking those questions. So I do think genuinely most people want to help. I think, a great thing when you're asking for something is to give people that out and say, I know you're really busy. I know, I'm asking for a lot. Like, I'd really appreciate it. And then to gracefully just step away if the answer is no. Yes. And to also know that it is not you. Like your last sentence that you put in there, you need to know that and believe that. Like, everyone is really busy. And if they're saying no, they're probably saying no to protect some time and something for themselves, which again is a whole nother lesson, but it's not about you. They're potentially saying no to everyone except maybe their very closest friends and already established, partnerships. So, and the answer might not always be no either. It could be about deadline. And most authors I've reached out to about things are super honest about that. And they're either like, I'm no across the board for this because I don't have time, or like, I don't have time right now. So, know that a rejection is not about you.
No, it's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think the other thing I see in this etiquette realm is this idea of quid pro quo, like you promote me, I'll promote you.
Yes.
And I think that can be a tough thing. Like I think you have to be willing to, if you agree to participate in someone's Facebook party or participate in their giveaway or promote them in some way, there's not an expectation that they'll then do the same thing for you. And there's lots of reasons for that. Again, it could really just go back to the time thing, but I think you do need to be careful of getting into that trap of I've seen some commentary about, well, I did this nice thing for this author, why won't they do this thing for me? And it's tough. There could be lots of reasons. There could be genre reasons. They may feel like their audience is not a good match for you, vice versa.
They may feel overstretched. There was a lot of Facebook parties, and so I pulled back because I realized I was hitting the same readers over and over again. So there may just be promotional reasons. I feel like it's a little like my feelings about wedding guest invites. I've been invited to a lot of weddings. If I have a wedding, I don't expect to be invited to a wedding in exchange for inviting somebody to my wedding, if that makes sense. And I realize that not everybody agrees with that, which is why I kind of like the wedding idea, because it's to every person's taste. But I think you're right. It's for me, and you weigh it, different people, different times, and your own schedule. But there are different circumstances, and the answer is sometimes going to change, and sometimes the answer will be yes, and sometimes the answer will be no.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
We've got about 10 more minutes, I think. Was there anything else that popped up? I know we all kind of threw this question out to various people. Mm-hmm. I think I saw somebody talking about changing genres.
Yes, Zoe York commented and said her advice would be to newbies, you will slide from genre to genre, and that is totally okay. And then she went on to say, there's so much emphasis on knowing your brand and planning for the future, but there needs to be balance in there for following your muse and also reacting to market shifts.
Yes.
Obviously.
I agree with that. And that would be why I'm publishing under two different pen names for two different types of genre. Part of it is to diversify your portfolio type of approach, which is, if the historical market hits another dip, as it did, 5 years ago, hopefully the contemporary market can kind of bolster some of those sales, or vice versa.
One case you start off writing, say, contemporary romance because it's really hot and you're really inspired because there's so many stories coming out, and then you realize 2 or 3 books in that you have other interests and you're really much more inspired to write romantic suspense or fantasy or whatever. But you're not locked in. You don't have to just write contemporary romance because that's what you started writing. You don't have to not write contemporary romance because you're inspired to write something else. There's fluidity in the writing world, and you need to allow the ups and downs of that to work and not punish yourself for making decisions in one year and the market changing in another year and your muse changing in another year.
Yeah. And I think that's true for diverse. I mean, it's also true, within genre, but also like fiction, nonfiction. I mean, if you've written fiction and you're feeling really called to sort of nonfiction or essays or, I think there's a lot of fluidity there. And I like what she says about kind of market shifts, but also your muse. I mean, realizing that thing that inspires you may very well change and shift and back and forth, like from one thing to another.
I mean, if you're not inspired to write, what are you even doing?
Right.
It's too much torment and too much time in front of a laptop to be doing this if you don't enjoy it. Or at least if you don't get some sick enjoyment out of it because you don't enjoy it all the time.
I was going to say it should be fun. And I give always the caveat with that. Like it isn't always fun, but at its root, it should be fun. And you should still be able to lose yourself in the writing project. And yes, you're going to have deadlines and there's going to be moments of it that feel really icky, but like generally like trending up, like it should be trending towards something that you enjoy. I think, go ahead.
No, go.
Oh, did you have something else on that? Because so also on that same post that you put up, Alexis, kind of back to our first point about kind of your own journey and everybody's process looking different. Karen Booth commented, and I like her analogy here about it. She said, eyes on your own paper. In other words, don't judge yourself by the achievements of others. We all have our own path. It's not a race. And she goes on to say she's still working on that. But I like this idea. Like, it's exactly kind of where we started, but run your race. Like, it's very much a running thing. But like, if you're trying to pace yourself on someone else, you're potentially going to exhaust yourself because it's not your pace, it's theirs.
It's so easy to fall into that trap of, I have one book out and I'm not selling any copies. Am I doing the right thing? Should I be pursuing this fruitless task? And oh, look, we published at the same time and now she's a USA Today bestseller and she's got a book bub and she's got all this stuff and I'm doing it all wrong. And it's really easy if you're not focused on you and what you're able to do, because we're all able to do different things at different times. It's really easy to put extra pressure on yourself that you don't need, that will actually make you less successful. So eyes on your own paper.
Yeah, no, I like that analogy a lot. I think that's a good one. I'm just mining your Facebook feed because you were smart.
We all are.
Thanks. Dana Volney said, start collecting email addresses now, which is the best advice, especially if you are going to at some point release a book and realize that your email newsletter is 80 people long because you haven't been collecting email addresses. So as soon as you decide you want to write a book and you want to take this seriously and do it as a profession, I think you set up the Facebook page, you set up the Twitter account, you set up the email, and you set up the website, because at least you have those 4 basic things in place and people can find you, not only editors and agents, but even if you're doing flash fiction or anything like that beforehand, you may get invited to do some blog posts or whatever. You want to have those things in place so that you can jump on that, and collecting those email addresses is your best direct line to your readers. Because they have opted in and they have asked to be informed about what's going on with you and your writing. So that is the way to go, 100%, just from a very practical standpoint.
She also followed that. Sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
She followed that up by saying, you need to act like a real author from day one and not a pretend author or you're getting started author. You're a real author and you need to start right from the get-go and own it.
Yes, if we could work to please eliminate the word aspiring from our vocabulary, that would be great. And I think, we all had that moment, and it took someone saying that to me, like I would sort of apologize, like, oh, I'm writing something. And she was like, do you realize, like I actually had a friend sit down with me and she's like, do you realize you do that like every time? you say you're a writer. And she was like, I don't care what you do. Like, you can get a rubber band and put it around your wrist, or like, I don't like, but do something to stop yourself from sort of giving a caveat, like, I'm aspiring writer, or I'm just starting, or, oh, well, I'm writing something. Yeah. Like, just stop. Like, you're a writer, full stop. So yeah, that's advice I got early on, and I'm glad. And I mean, I'm not perfect at it. I probably still have my days where I don't own it, but yes, definitely professional from the beginning.
And start building that routine of posting every day and having a newsletter and interacting with anybody who is commenting with you, because eventually you get more and more fans, and eventually you get that steam rolling. And if you're just starting to figure it out once you start getting going, then you're too late. You're already behind the 8 ball again. And the whole point of all of this is to get ahead of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally true. When I was first starting out as a TV news producer, which is very high wire, right? Everything is live TV, and 40,000 things can go wrong. Whenever you go on a show, somebody just turned to me and said, fake it till you make it. I had no idea what I was doing. I was absolutely petrified. And you know what? You just sort of get really good at faking it and convincing people that you know what you're doing, because when you're the producer, you're supposed to be the one that's in the center, that's telling everybody what to do and where to go and how the show is going to go and all those things. And it's just you. And in a way, writing's a lot like that too, because you are your own small business, you are your own entity, you are the person you're promoting, all of those things. And so ultimately, whether you like being the middle of your brand or not, it comes down to you. And even if you have an assistant, and even if you have a publishing house, or whatever it is, ultimately you're the one who has to believe in you being a writer enough to actually make all this stuff work and to put all those balls into play. So absolutely, if people are interacting with you, interact with them. If people are asking to sign up for your newsletter, you better be sending a newsletter out. And it doesn't have to be monthly, it doesn't have to be weekly, it doesn't even have to be quarterly. You can do it whenever, but don't undersell yourself just because you are beginning.
With the fake it like you make it thing, there's a great term in counseling called acting as if. And I love that. And so I think a lot of times, if you're in a difficult situation and you think, if you can't feel that you are that person yet, you can act as if you are whatever that word needs to be, a best-selling author, a mid-list author, the author, whatever the author that you dream yourself to be, just act as if you are that person. And the thing about that and where that comes from is that if you do that enough, then that is, it becomes habit. Like, you stop apologizing for what you're doing or clarifying what you're doing because you've just faked it or acted it so much that it has actually become you, because it was always you. You just need that extra push.
Absolutely. I actually had to do that. I guess it was about a year ago. I got that knock on the head that I was still feeling too small and I wanted to be who I am now, but I didn't think that I was that person yet. And I was with a bigger author and was just like marveling at, oh, you have like just no boundaries and you're just like, I'm awesome. And I was like, oh, I could do that. Like, I could just do that. I don't have to have someone give me permission to think that I'm awesome and to talk to everyone like I know what I'm doing, because I do know what I'm doing. I just actually have to do it. And I actually put her picture on my wall, and every day I was like, you are her.
Yeah.
So it works.
No, it's true. Nobody gives you a stamped card that says, here, you're a real author now. Like, that's just not how it works.
No, you give it to yourself.
Exactly.
Like, here's my stamped card. Yeah.
And it feels really weird while you're still getting used to it, but eventually, you're right, it does. All of a sudden, you're just like, oh, I'm doing it now.
Yeah.
Right.
But the acting analogy I like, because it does feel uncomfortable at first. It does feel like you're on stage and people are staring at you, even though they're not. Like, they don't know what's going through your head, but you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to figure out. I don't really know. But they're not, because they don't know. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Has anybody got any other points, or shall we start wrapping things up here? What have you got for me?
I think we hit on most of the build your tribe, build relationships, and
do good.
Do good. Be good to yourself. But, I think part of what's the theme running through this too is also be kind and be good to others. I think, some of this developing your tribe, developing your relationship, asking somebody to blurb your book is a whole lot easier if you've featured their book on your blog without them even asking. If you've recommended their book in your newsletter, just like be yourself with that. If you're reading something you like, talk about it online, mention it in your newsletter. I think that's the most genuine way to kind of go about connecting with readers and connecting with other authors, is bond over those things.
I did it today, actually. I was all like, I love this book, and I don't know if I should post about it. And then I was like, that's really stupid because you do backflips when people post about liking your book. So I went ahead and I posted it, and she immediately responded, and I was like, we're both going to be at RT. Could maybe I meet you? And she was like, that's awesome.
Yes.
And if I hadn't, just gotten out there, then that relationship wouldn't have started. And I have no idea where that relationship's eventually going to go, but it has to start somewhere, and it starts from a place of kindness. I'm not asking anything from her other than to tell her I really love her book.
Yeah, and being genuine. Like I ended up having, meeting up with somebody at RWA for the first time, and I think our conversation on Twitter started about like one of those kitchen like what is it, like Blue Apron or something, and she had done it and had a great picture, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been thinking about that. And so like you have this momentary reaction of, should I contact this author who I really admire about her Blue Apron? But like yeah, you totally should. Yeah, and I mean, we've ended up like being at other conferences together, and like we text message occasionally, so I think you just be yourself. And if you like someone's book or you're interested in what they posted on Twitter, just tell them.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, we're going to wrap things up as we always wrap things up with us talking about sort of what we've been doing and a little bit about our projects. So I will start on the other direction now. Mary Chris, what have you got for us?
Well, you can find me at marychrisescobar.com. I'm finishing a novel, which I actually have the last little bit of kind of outlined, so I don't really outline, but I always get to the point at the end where I can sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I think we will have a first draft finished soon. But if you go to my website, marychrisescobar.com, you can sign up for my infrequent quarterly newsletter and stay up to date on that.
Awesome. Great. And I'm Alexis Ann. You can find me at alexisannbooks.com. I'm working on Summer Heat, which is the 5th book in the Storm Inside series. It's actually coming out in about 4 weeks. I will have the official cover blurb and pre-order links up in the next week because I have reached the point finally where I can affirmatively say that this is when this book is coming out. It's been a long year, and it's only March.
Can we say that it has a pretty cover? Like, we don't have to say anything about it, but it's really pretty.
It is. It's really, I mean, it's out there. It just hasn't had the official, this is the cover.
Okay. It has a very pretty cover.
Thank you. By romanced by the cover, by the way.
Yes. Who is an excellent, excellent cover artist, and we should probably have her on at some point.
We should.
Covers.
She could talk about her favorite covers.
A while ago, but we should have her do a crash course. So
yes,
she could talk about how to promo once you've got your cover.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
She will listen to this and contact us and be like, you guys.
You could have just asked, like, you don't have.
Here's your Easter egg. So I'm Julia Kelly and Julia Blake. As Julia Blake, I just sent off the first in the Game Changer series, which is my sports romance series, to my editor for line edits. So that's going to be coming back, and that book is coming out in August. It's actually up for a pre-order now, and not quite up for a pre-order yet, but coming in the fall is the first of the Matchmaker of Edinburgh series, which is my historical Scottish series, and that is The Look of Love, and I just finished the first draft on Sunday, which is very exciting. So before this, I was actually working my way through the first couple chapters. So I'm into edits right now, and hopefully we'll have cover reveals for both of those books soon. I just want to make sure that we plug our newsletter. You can actually get this episode and notices about, show notes and things like that sent directly to your inbox every month. If you go on the website, you can find a link to that. Our website is firstdraftwriting.com. And also, if you could leave us reviews on YouTube and SoundCloud and iTunes and rate us, it is a huge help in getting this podcast out to other people and to help them also learn about kind of the business and craft of being a writer. So thank you so much, and we will see you next month.